it's Michelle, your virtual AT. Today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about concussion and the recovery process. So it's very common that I get asked in my practice with my concussion patients, when will I get better? And honestly, that can be a bit of a tricky question, mainly just because every concussion is a little bit different. And it's different because it can relate to our history, it relates to the force, it relates to the impact or point of impact and what the repercussions were with that. And it depends on if there are any severe dysfunctions. So that could be with the eye, that could be with speech, that could be with hearing, so like ringing in the ears, stuff like that. And that really just depends on the degree of concussion. So there's a variety, and it's tough to say whether one is going to be mild, moderate, or severe just based on doing like a symptom scale, stuff like that. There are various methods to diagnose and look at concussion. I do look at a symptom scale every single appointment just to see where we're at for that day, and that can lead me to what I maybe want to target in that appointment or things that I can do in that appointment. I will say that I feel kids or adolescents tend to get better a little bit faster. And that's just within my own experience with what I have worked with. Adults, we definitely tend to get better slightly slower. I think the reason for kids, adolescents being so efficient in that recovery is that they don't have years of compensations built up on that. So what I mean is they don't have years of maybe poor body mechanics or poor movement patterns, stuff like that. Whereas adults, we have a lot more of that. So that concussion might just be that end of the road type of injury, or that is just your body's way of saying like, okay, like we need to maybe address some other things. As related to the type of impact that there was. Obviously that has a huge effect on the degree of that concussion as well. But those other underlying issues, I feel like do contribute to that more acute injury. So that's somewhat the tricky question. When will I get better? And the way that I describe this is, well, it depends. And, you know, it depends on your symptoms, what degree of dysfunctions you have, whether that's in the neck or the eyes or within the inner ear. Those all have an effect on when you will get better. And if you have a history of concussion, that just might mean that you will likely take a little bit longer to get better. And that is perfectly normal because if some of that was not addressed in the previous one, it may now be tagging along in the most current one. So the recovery process is a little bit complicated, and it's our job to navigate through that. So what we would like to see, if we imagine like a bar graph here, we would like to go in this nice upwards trajectory. But the fact of the matter, that's not really how it goes. And that's not really how it goes with most injuries. Because when we're trying to look at different exercises to do and different treatment techniques to do, there's a little bit of gray area. What works on one person might not work on the other. So we might be here, and then we might have a little bit of a drop off where maybe we have a couple crummy days, but we do always hope to go back up. But there will be ups and downs. So very often I like to say that you will have days that are up and down, and it can be a bit of a wave. So that's just how we describe that, is that there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days, but we always want to hope that there's going to be more good days than bad. And that is more so how I like to describe that to people, is that it depends. And sometimes it depends how long you've been struggling with those concussions. Sometimes we don't see those people right away because someone has told them, oh, just, rest, dark room for a week or a few days, and that'll help you get better, no exercise, stuff like that. So those are some general ways to get better, but it doesn't always fit the mold. So it might be a couple of weeks, it might be a month, it might be months, or it might even be years that we see some of these people. And by that time, there's so many things that are ingrained there that it is going to take a little bit longer. So things that can be affected can be the eyes, the inner ear. And if you ever notice that like you feel like your heart is racing, or that you're only taking like shallow breaths, those are things that can all be looked at as well. Also like jaw pain. Very often there can be some TMJ issues involved with concussion depending on the degree of the impact. But why there would be stuff like that, the breathing or the heart, is because if we think of here, that's where your first and second vertebrae are. And then that's where like your skull also is. But there's a lot of arteries, nerves, and veins that run through that area. So if it's being closed off, that's maybe why you're getting some of that, is because there might be an overstimulus or an understimulus of that area. And if there's no exercises to help with loosening that off, it might stay there for a little while. Also, because there is so much going on there, because there is that nerve root that comes from head down, and some of those nerves that do control that heart rate and rhythm and breathing rate are within this area, that would be why that would lead into that. Very often too, the inner ear, it has 3 bones in it, and it also has crystals. So if those get debunked or moved around, that can contribute to any dizziness, vertigo, stuff that you're feeling with that, maybe even some spinning, either you or the room. And then visual stuff, if you feel like you see stuff moving in front of you that you know isn't moving, it's just that perception. So it's our job to assess those different areas. And what I normally would do is I would check balance. Depending on the degree of it, we might just do eyes open rather than trying to do eyes closed sort of stuff, because that might really just be aggravating, throw you off, increase some symptoms, stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we kind of clear some of that up first, as well as some of the visual stuff. I tend to grade or decide what I want to do based on how symptomatic someone is. So we always take a symptom scale every single appointment, and that gives me a bit of a lead in as to what things I can target that day. So if it's an initial assessment, we might be able to do the side-to-side tracking, the up and down, convergence. We might be able to work into more things. But if you're very symptomatic and even those just make you super dizzy, nausea, or fogginess, or headache, that's probably all we'll do. But there are different areas that we can work on and then build on top of that. So that would be stuff that I would look at, as well as the neck range of motion, because if there are some very tight muscles in there, it will also contribute to headaches, dizziness, all of that stuff. So I know it's a lot of information, and I know it doesn't answer maybe how long will I get, how long until my recovery, but that's the simple answer, is it depends on you, and it depends on the degree of the injury. So there's no cookie cutter timeline for it, because each person is different and each injury is just a little bit different, but it's the way that we go about it and the way that we push things to get better. Because like we said, that recovery process, there's going to be lots of ups and downs, and it's our job to help navigate that with you and figure out what treatments we can do on you that will help you go on that upward, and also what you can do on your own time exercise wise that will also help that upwards trend. So I hope that helps a lot of you guys out, and if you're interested in more content like this, please feel free to subscribe and like, and I will see you on the next one.